Chapter 1131. Master Ning, it turned out to be a misunderstanding, but your Ning family is thousands of miles away. Why did you come to this barren land in Sichuan to build a house? Luo Xiang asked Ning Ji. Ning Ji knew that Luo Xiang didn't know the secret of the town's magic tower, and he wouldn't tell Luo Xiang, so he smiled slightly. Although Sichuan is barren, the environment is good, the scenery is beautiful, and there is no noise. It is a good place to practice. Besides, it's good that the Gu family and my Ning family came quickly. This time the Gu family suffered, and the Gu family was killed. I will rebuild this place so that the rest of the Gu family will not have a stable place to live. Luo Xiang laughed when he heard it. Ha ha ha, I didn't expect young Master Ning to be so warm-hearted. However, this Sichuan is not as peaceful as Kyoto, and there are evil cultivators who appear from time to time. If you hurt Ning Gongzi, it will not be worth the loss. Young Master Ning, who tastes tender meat, will definitely not be used to staying in this place. As for rebuilding the Gu family, I should leave it to my Luo family. After all, our Luo family and Gu family had contacts hundreds of years ago. And we're not far from each other. Hearing this, Ning Ji frowned and his face turned cold. He could hear that Luo Xiang actually wanted to follow him to compete for this place in the Gu family. If there is no demon suppression tower, Ning Ji would not be rude to this broken place, but now that there is a demon suppression tower, no matter who it is, Ning Ji will not let go. Young Master Luo, do you mean you want to compete with me for this place in the Gu family? Ning Ji's face was gloomy, and there was a cold glow in his eyes. Young Master Ning, you have to think so, and I have nothing to explain. You are far away in Kyoto, and you came to Sichuan to fight for territory with us. Isn't it a bit too bullying? Luo Xiang admitted generously. Humph, you Luo Xiang are in Mobei, what am I doing in Sichuan? It's not up to you Luo family to dictate. Let me tell you, I have to make a decision on the place of the Gu family. If you are not convinced, then we will compare. I want to see if your Luo family is powerful or our Ning family is powerful. Don't think that our Ning family has a long way to go, so I'm afraid of you. Ning Ji had a firm look on his face. He was going to set this land, and he would never give it to others. Luo Xiang did not expect that Ning Ji would be determined now for such a piece of land as the Gu family manor, which was somewhat unexpected. Although Luo Xiang was very angry now, it would be worth the loss if he really wanted to fall out with the Ning family because of the ruins of the Gu family. However, since the Ning family has a foothold in Sichuan, it will be much more difficult for the Luo family to expand in the future. After thinking for a while, Luo Xiang compromised and smiled lightly. Since young Master Ning likes this place, you can use it as you like. How could I possibly have a bad relationship with young Master Ning for such a place? Young Master Ning, if you have time, go to my Luo family's house. I will definitely entertain young Master Ning. Luo Xiang didn't know the secret of the Demon Town Tower, so he compromised and left. If he knew, he would definitely fight to the death with Ning Ji. Seeing Luo Xiang leaving, Ning Ji breathed a sigh of relief. As the saying goes, a strong dragon can't overwhelm the local snakes. If Luo Xiang really wants to do it, Ning Ji is no match. And if you want to dispatch people from the Ning family thousands of miles away to fight with the Luo family, it is not necessarily who will win or lose. How long have I been practicing this time? Ning Ji asked his subordinates. Master, you have been practicing for nearly half a month. The subordinate replied. Half a month. Ning Ji's face showed joy. At this speed, I would have been able to reach half-step Wuhao a year ago, ha ha ha. Ning Ji laughed wildly, and then ordered to Uncle Zhong, the construction of the manor must be accelerated. From now on, this is where I live. As ordered, Uncle Zhong nodded. Ning Ji turned around and walked into the Demon Suppression Tower, and started to practice again. Chapter 1132. At this time, David was flying to Sichuan. He now has to use the demon suppression tower to quickly improve his strength and strive to rescue his mother and Sonia before the Chinese New Year. After about 5 hours, the plane stopped steadily in Sichuan. After taking a taxi, David went to Gujia Manor. The Gu family manor, which was originally thought to be in ruins, has now been rebuilt with walls, and the machines in the manor are roaring. This time, David was a little puzzled. He didn't know who had taken the Gu family manor for himself in just 10 days. When David walked to the door, he was stopped by the guards. Seeing that the door could not be entered, David jumped directly over the wall. David intends to go to Zhenmo Tower to have a look. If someone here is redeveloped, just some ordinary developers, David intends to pay for this place. Since there is no way to take away the demon suppression tower, then make this place his own. David even planned to make this place a sect and establish his own sect in order to compete with the Martial Arts Alliance. Although David has a dragon sect, the dragon sect is not suitable for exposure. David can re-establish a sect, and then gather several halls of the dragon sect together. In this case, David's strength will be greatly increased, and then it is not impossible to rescue his mother and Sonia years ago in cooperation with the secret of the town demon tower. David avoided the construction workers in the manor, and after walking to the demon town tower, he immediately found several wuzongs under the town demon tower. After seeing these wuzongs, David's brows instantly wrinkled. The appearance of these few wuzongs proves that this Gu family manor is not a redevelopment by ordinary developers, it must be a certain sect family that occupied this place. David now hopes that this certain sect family has not discovered the secret of the Zhenmo Tower. In this case, David can still negotiate with the other party. At this time, several Wuzong masters also discovered David, and someone immediately stopped David. "Who are you? How did you break in here?" Seeing David, several Wuzong masters were all very nervous. After all, ordinary people would not approach here. "This is my place, I just want to ask, who are you? Why are you taking my place?" David asked in an anti-guest manner. David's question directly confused several Wuzong masters. They also didn't know who David was. After hearing what David said, they thought that David was someone else from the Gu family. So the master Wuzong who spoke gave a wink to the others and asked to find Uncle Zhong. As long as Uncle Zhong was found, it would be easy to explain. Soon, Uncle Zhong was found. When Uncle Zhong saw David for the first time, he was stunned. He. Uncle Zhong pointed at David and was so frightened that he was speechless for a while. And David also recognized Uncle Zhong, and the corner of his mouth raised slightly. "It seems that these people are all recruited by you." He is David, he is David." Uncle Zhong finally called out. When several of the Ning family's Wuzong masters heard this, their faces were instantly shocked, and then their breath soared and their weapons were displayed. As soon as David reached out, he slapped the head of Uncle Zhong with a slap. David did this to kill people. He knew that Uncle Zhong was the old housekeeper of the Gu family, and he must know the secret of the town magic tower. Although I don't know if Uncle Zhong has revealed the secrets of this Devil Town Tower, I still want to kill him first. "You dare to kill my Ning family, damn!" a Wuzong master said with a grim face. "Are you from the Ning family in Kyoto?" David frowned. He didn't expect that the people of the Ning family would come here, but when he thought that Ning Ji and Gu Kaiwan were mixed together at that time, they wanted to kill themselves, so it was not surprising that the people of the Ning family came here. Chapter 1133. Since we know that we are from the Ning family, we will capture it before we can, so as not to suffer from flesh and blood. A Wuzong master reprimanded David. "Humph, I killed the people of your Ning family. It's true that there is a way to heaven, you don't go, and there is no door to H3LL, you break in." David said it. A bully stepped forward and slapped the Wuzong master who spoke directly. The other party didn't have time to react, but only felt a strong attack, and then the whole person flew out. The Wuzong master's chest was sunken, his eyes were wide open, and there was no breath. The remaining few Wuzong masters of the Ning family were taken aback. "You, don't mess around." Several people were a little scared. David sneered, "If you say don't mess around, will I not mess around?" After that, David's figure disappeared in a flash. A few screams were heard shortly after. Several Wuzong masters could not even hold a single move under David. Looking at the tragic deaths of several Ning family Wuzong masters, David smiled. He found that he became more and more handy in terms of strength and combat experience. As long as you practice hard and rescue your mother and Sonia years ago, there should be great hope. David stepped on the bodies of several Wuzong masters from the Ning family and walked into the Demon Suppression Tower. As soon as he walked into the Genmo Tower, David felt like he was immersed in a hot spring, very comfortable. At this moment, on the third floor of the Demon Suppression Tower, Ning Ji was sitting cross-legged, absorbing the breath of the Demon Suppressing Tower, and Ning Ji's strength grew rapidly. But just as Ning Ji was immersed in his cultivation, a dangerous aura suddenly rushed towards him. Ning Ji suddenly opened his eyes and stared at the stairs in front of him. Da-da-da! There was a sound of footsteps on the stairs, which made Ning Ji frown. He had already told those subordinates not to let anyone in, but now someone has come in the Demon Suppression Tower, which made Ning Ji feel very strange. "Who?" Ning Ji shouted at the stairs. But no one responded to him, and the sound of footsteps still came clearly. Ning Ji stood up suddenly, frowning deeper. If someone breaks into the Demon Suppression Tower, his subordinates will definitely block it. Who can break through the hurried Wuzong master's block? Even if he could break through, there would still be the sound of fighting, but Ning Ji didn't hear a single sound. Ning Ji's heart began to panic. In this area, the people who can silently eliminate their subordinates and then enter the town demon tower are probably the only people from the Luo family. Could it be that Luo Xiang is back? Ning Ji suspected that Luo Xiang didn't really leave, but was looking for a chance to kill himself. As long as he kills people, Ning Ji has no chance to inform the Ning family. And it is impossible for the Ning family to suspect the Luo family. Thinking of this, Ning Ji looked around the Demon Town Tower, trying to find an opportunity to escape. But Devil Town Tower has only one exit from the gate, and it is impossible to go out from other places. Ning Ji gritted his teeth, his eyes bursting with cold light, staring at the stairs. Soon, a figure appeared, and when Ning Ji saw the person coming, he was stunned. "It's you?" Ning Ji asked with wide eyes. "Of course it's me, who do you think it is?" A smile appeared on David's mouth. "Ha ha ha! I was just looking for you, but I didn't expect you to come by yourself." Ning Ji suddenly laughed. He is now at the peak of Wuzong's strength, so he doesn't need to be afraid of David at all. But Ning Ji didn't know that David's current strength was no longer what it used to be. Ning Ji didn't know about David's killing of Guo Wei. "It seems that you are very confident in yourself." Seeing that Ning Ji suddenly laughed, David asked lightly with a face full of indifference. Chapter 1134. "Of course, I'm going to kill you today. Take your dragon crystal, and with this dragon crystal, I think who is my opponent." Fanaticism appeared in Ning Ji's eyes, the aura on his body radiated slightly, and murderous aura came from all directions. David looked at Ning Ji, who was almost mad, and said lightly, "Can we go out and talk about it?" "What? Are you afraid?" Ning Ji looked at David sarcastically. "I'm afraid of destroying this Demon Town Tower. If I kill you, I can do it anywhere." David smiled coldly. "Don't be mad, I'll let you taste my power in a while." After Ning Ji finished speaking, he walked towards the bottom of the tower. Ning Ji was also afraid that the fight between the two of them would destroy the Demon Suppression Tower. This Demon Suppression Tower is a treasure and must not be damaged. David followed Ning Ji out of the Demon Suppression Tower. When Ning Ji saw the tragic deaths of his subordinates outside the tower, his face instantly became extremely gloomy. Seeing Ning Zhi's face, David smiled slightly. Your servants of the Ning family are too unresistible, I just patted it a few times, and it became like this. David, don't be complacent. I'll tell you the truth. I'm already at the peak of Wuzong. Do you know what the peak of Wuzong represents? No one of the younger generation of warriors in Kyoto has reached the peak of Wuzong. My current strength, even on the free and easy ranking, can still have a place. If you fight with me, I will make you die ugly. Ning Zhi gritted his teeth and said viciously. The peak of Wuzong. David pretended to be surprised. You have reached the peak of Wuzong so quickly, it's really terrible. Seeing David's surprised look, Ning Zhi looked proud. David, now you know how good I am. If you hand over Longjing and the treasures on your body, I may still save your life. Otherwise, I'll make you unable to survive or die. Looking at Ning Zhi's smug look, David smiled lightly and said, your strength at the peak of Wuzong is really awesome, but in my eyes, it's almost meaningless. If you want to kill me, I'm afraid it's not that simple. Arrogant, even the peak of Wuzong can't kill you, so aren't you even more powerful than the peak of Wuzong? Ning Zhi sneered. He doesn't think that David's strength can surpass the peak of Wuzong. How long does it take to separate from Suolong Island? Even if David is a genius, it is impossible to increase his strength to the point of ignoring the peak of Wuzong in a short time. Maybe only a little bit stronger. David stretched out his hand and gestured. Hey, you can't bluff me, I have just been promoted to the peak of Wuzong with the help of the Demon Suppression Tower, and how can you? Before Ning Zhi finished speaking, he suddenly closed his mouth. He almost revealed the secret of the Demon Suppression Tower, and Ning Zhi thought that David didn't know the secret of the Demon Suppression Tower. If you don't believe me, we can try. After David finished speaking, the breath on his body began to expand rapidly, and terrifying spiritual power surrounded David's body. As the breath on David's body rose, the ground began to tremble. Rumbling. Like an earthquake, the house under construction not far away began to collapse again amid the tremors, scaring many workers to flee. This. Ning Zhi's face was ugly, his eyes were wide open, and he couldn't believe everything just now. The breath that David exudes just now is no worse than the peak of Wuzong, or even worse. Ning Zhi's eyelids were beating, and the killing intent in his heart was getting stronger and stronger. David's talent is too smart, and his strength has increased so quickly in such a short period of time. Ning Zhi knew that if David was left, it would always be a big hidden danger for their Ning family. Chapter 1135. Do you still want to try it now? David looked at Ning Zhi playfully. Ning Zhi's eyes narrowed, but he didn't speak, but after a loud shout, his fist came to David in an instant. Holy Light Fist! David raised his hand and greeted him with a punch. The fists were offset, and the terrifying energy erupted one after another, instantly centered on the two people, and dispersed towards the surroundings. The houses that had just been built began to collapse one after another under this terrifying energy, and many people were running around and dodging. Ning Zhi's figure swayed a few times before it stabilized, while David stepped back with his right foot, and landed firmly on the ground, and a crack instantly appeared on the ground. Don't think about preserving your strength. If you don't do your best, you are not qualified to do it with me. David looked at Ning Zhi and said coldly. Ning Zhi looked at David solemnly. He didn't understand what happened to David's holy light fist just now. With the simple punch just now, Ning Zhi felt that his body's breath was beginning to become disordered, and he was instantly stressed. At this moment, Ning Zhi was trying to adjust his breathing. Soon, the breath of Ning Zhi broke out again. This time, Ning Zhi did not hold back at all. The breath of Wuzong's peak exploded at once. This terrifying aura is much more tyrannical than the air. Some migrant workers who were watching the fun from a distance of hundreds of meters were actually shocked by this terrifying aura and vomited blood, and some people even fell to the ground and died. David frowned, and with a quick movement in his hand, a barrier appeared, instantly blocking the terrifying aura. He didn't expect that Ningxi, as a son of an aristocratic family, would be so careless. In Kyoto, as a warrior, you cannot kill ordinary people casually, and there are very strict rules. But in this barren Zishuan, although there are rules, but after all, the mountains are high and the emperor is far away, so Ningxi dared to be so presumptuous. As a child of an aristocratic family, you are so cruel to people's lives, it's just damn. David looked at Ningxi coldly, killing intent rising in his eyes. Humph, as long as I can kill you, what's the point of killing these ordinary people? They are just ants. The big deal is that in the end, each family will pay hundreds of thousands of dollars. Our Ning family is not bad. Ningxi snorted coldly. If that's the case, then I'll kill you and pay your Ning family $1 million, and I'm not short of money. After David finished speaking, the whole person instantly moved towards Ningxi. David smashed it hard, but Ningxi's body disappeared when David smashed it. Immediately afterwards, a dangerous aura appeared above David's head. David looked up and found that Ningxi was in the air, and then the whole person turned into a sharp sword, coming towards David from top to bottom. Ningxi used inertia to maximize the speed of his body. The sound of breaking the air sounded. Ningxi's speed was so fast that a vacuum was formed around him. The huge shock wave caused the ground under David's feet to begin to crack, and David's body seemed to be pressed against a mountain. David frowned, then his right hand flashed golden light, and then he threw a punch. Holy Light Fist! In an instant, a golden beam of light rushed towards Ningxi ruthlessly. Boom! With a loud sound, the whole world seemed to tremble, and the dazzling rays of light outshone the sunlight. David's body was covered with golden scales, resisting the invisible impact. It must be said that after Ningxi was promoted to the peak of Wuzong, his strength has indeed increased a lot. David's punch shattered the air waves around Ningxi, and as the golden light scattered, Ningxi's body fell steadily in front of David. At this moment, David's feet had already been sunk into the ground by the enormous pressure. Your strength is indeed beyond my imagination. If you can withstand this blow from me, there are not many people even among the younger generation in the entire Kyoto. Now you are afraid to be famous on the happy ranking. Ningxi looked at David and said lightly. Chapter 1136. David didn't know what the free and easy list was, and it was the second time he heard Ningxi mention it, but David didn't ask. Is this your strongest blow? If it is, I will be disappointed. I thought I could take you back and forth. David gently pulled out his legs and looked at Ningxi jokingly. Didn't you also use your full strength? Ningxi looked at David coldly. David smiled lightly. If I used all my strength, you would be a corpse now. You are too arrogant. Ningxi frowned, and then his breath rose again. The golden light on David's body also flickered at the same time, and David's golden body was brought to the extreme. David's current body, even if it is an 8th-rank martial sect, is basically indestructible and indefensible. Under the blessing of the Divine Dragon's power, this indestructible golden body has already been improved by an unknown amount. The current David is like the great Luo Jingxian in the world. Many ordinary people are watching from a distance and kneeling on the ground one after another. Looking at David, who was shining with golden light, Ningxi's face became more and more solemn, and then one after another of shining spells began to surround Ningxi. At this moment, Ningxi seemed to be in a huge beam of light. The surrounding spells flickered, and then became bigger and disappeared. Slowly, Ningxi's body turned into spells, and these spells formed the shape of a person. What's this? Seeing this, David frowned. It was the first time he had seen such a situation. Whether it was the ninjutsu of the island warriors or the stealth technique, David had seen it before. It was the first time David had seen Ningxi like this. This strange technique made David unable to start for a while. A series of incantations suddenly came towards David, and instantly spread into a large net of several meters, to wrap David in it. David slapped it with a savage palm, and the huge wind made those spells blown away instantly. It's just that after these spells were broken up, they reunited in an instant. Seeing this, David threw a few more punches. Bang bang bang! One after another strong wind howled up, making those spells have no chance to condense. But soon, the scattered spells turned into huge palms and slapped David down. A slapped palm on David's body. David's body made a sound like a bell. The scales flickering with golden light began to fall off and disappear, and the golden light on the body began to dim. Soon, the undamaged golden body on David's body was shattered, and the bronze-colored skin was exposed outside, shining brightly under the sunlight. The spells condensed in an instant, and Ningxi's body appeared faintly. Seeing David's undead golden body disappearing, Ningxi's face was full of pride. The peak of Wuzong is not only the improvement of strength. After I reach this state, I can start to use many of our Ning family's spells. You must know our Ning family's spells, but they spent a lot of money and invited a lot of spells. Master, tailor-made for me. You don't deserve to fight with me at all. Remember, you are not fighting with me, but with our entire Ning family. Ningxi smiled coldly, and then his figure changed again, smashing towards David fiercely. Bang bang bang! A punch hit David's body instantly retreated, and his chest sank even more. Without the indestructible golden body, but relying on the tyranny of the flesh, it is still difficult to resist Ningxi's attack. Every punch David threw, like hitting in the air, could not cause damage to Ningxi at all, and could not stop Ningxi's attack. Chapter 1137. David's body slammed heavily on the ground, directly smashing a deep hole into the ground. The manor, which was already half built, is now in ruins. Blood spilled out from the corner of David's mouth, and there were even more shocking scars on his body. Ha ha ha, that's all. Ningxi's body was solid, and he looked at David and laughed. David got up slowly, wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, and suddenly grinned. Seeing that David was still smiling, Ningxi was slightly taken aback. You are dying, yet you are still smiling. How do you know that my death is imminent? David smiled coldly, then stretched out his hand, and the dragon-slaying sword appeared in his hand. A raging flame was burning on the dragon-slaying sword, and the flames reflected half of the sky. Humph, even with a sword, you can't hurt me. Ningxi snorted coldly, and then his body turned into a surrounding spell again. 9 Shadow Swordsmanship. David's figure spun rapidly, and then divided into 2, divided into 3. In the end, 6 identical Davids stood in front of Ningxi, holding the dragon sword. In an instant, the spells began to turn into huge palms and slap towards David. 6 David, 6 huge palms. There were bursts of energy fluctuations on each palm. Rumbling. As if the Tathagata Buddha suppressed, the huge palm pressed down. David held the dragon-slaying sword and suddenly shouted, Ling Huo, start! The 6 dragon-slaying swords instantly rose into a huge flame, and the flame rose into the sky, more than 10 meters high. The hot flames penetrated the huge palms in an instant. What? With a scream, I saw the palms composed of spells begin to disappear quickly. Immediately afterwards, a human figure appeared, but this human figure was surrounded by flames. Ningxi's body appeared, and flames were still burning on his clothes. Fire! Fire! Ningxi fought desperately and was still rolling on the ground before putting out the flames. Just when Ningxi breathed a sigh of relief, he saw a big golden hand grabbing it. Ningxi's face changed suddenly. He wanted to dodge, but at this moment, his body seemed to be bound by someone, and he couldn't dodge at all. David grabbed Ningxi's collar and then carried it to him. Ningxi's face was blackened by flames. He looked very embarrassed, and there was something incredible in his eyes. That's it. David grinned, and then slapped him fiercely. Snapped. With a loud noise, 5 fingerprints were pulled out of Ningxi's face. The teeth fell out of Ningxi's mouth, and blood flowed out. That's it. David finished jokingly, and slapped it again. Clap clap clap. David carried Ningxi left and right to draw a bow, and slapped Ningxi's face fiercely, and Ningxi's face instantly turned into a pig's head. David just wanted to humiliate Ningxi severely, so that his defense line completely collapsed. Let him see himself later, like a mouse meets a cat. Ningxi, as the eldest young master of the Ning family in Kyoto, David did not intend to kill him. If he wanted to rescue his mother and Sonia years ago, David knew that he would not easily make many enemies in Kyoto. A long family and martial arts alliance is enough for David to deal with. As for David turning those island warriors into human sticks and cutting off Guo Wei's head, it was all to deter the aristocratic sects in Kyoto, so don't provoke yourself easily. I don't know how many slaps I slapped Ningxi, but in the end, Ningxi's face was swollen. There is still a slit in his eyes, as if the Pekingese were stung by a bee. As soon as David let go, Ningxi fell to the ground like a dead dog. You are not my opponent, hurry up, you dare to provoke me, you will die next time. David looked at Ningxi coldly, and then walked directly towards the Demon Town Tower. Chapter 1138. Ningxi glared at David's back, and suddenly there was a sound of bones shattering from his body. David turned back suddenly, but found that Ningxi's body was paralyzed on the ground like a pile of mud, and then he reshaped his body and stood up. When Ningxi stood up again, the swelling on his face disappeared. A burst of black light erupted in Ningxi's body, as if it were radiated from within. I want you to die. Ningxi drank angrily, and then a drop of black blood flew out from the center of his eyebrows. Ningxi's hands moved, and the black drop of blood suddenly started to burn. A drop of blood erupted into a raging fire. However, Ningxi's body was scorched in this raging fire. Every inch of Ningxi's skin began to shrink, and then turned into a pitch-black color. Under the irradiation of the flames, the black skin flashed a strange light. The flames gradually went out, and Ningxi's body was like tempered steel. Sensen's cold light rose from Ningxi's body. Looking at Ningxi, who suddenly turned dark, David's mouth twitched. It turns out that you are still a half-African. I didn't expect your dad to have such a hobby. Hearing David's words, Ningxi was not angry and stared angrily. I'm going to tear your mouth apart. Ningxi rushed towards David and punched David fiercely. David did not show weakness, his body flashed golden light, and then layers of scales began to adhere to the skin. Clang clang clang. The two attacked each other with the most primitive and pure power. Every punch made a sound like steel colliding. The flames were blazing, and the blasts of thunder continued to explode. I saw a black figure and a golden figure intertwined in the air, and a terrifying energy wave spread around. There is no one intact place in the entire manor, only the town demon tower is still standing. Bang! Ningxi and David threw a punch at the same time. Ningxi's punch hit David's chest fiercely, and a terrifying energy exploded in David's chest, like a cannonball blasting, a huge impact. It made David sway. At this moment, David also punched Ningxi, and after the same explosion, Ningxi's figure took a few steps back. In this way, even if Ningxi reincarnated as a technique, there was still some gap between him and David. Ningxi roared, his eyes full of fighting intent and anger. In an instant, Ningxi's body turned into a streamer, and with a loud breaking sound, he rushed towards David. It's really a good opportunity to practice. David's eyes narrowed slightly, and he rushed up directly. Strength can be cultivated and increased, but fighting skills and control of strength require constant battles to improve. The battle with Ningxi this time made David feel a lot again. Rumbling. The bodies of the two people kept colliding, making a deafening sound. David mobilized Sheng Guang Fist, and the golden fists fell on Ningxi like raindrops. Similarly, Ningxi also punched out, constantly beating David's body. You come and go between two people, this is already a confrontation between pure strength and flesh. Bang! The two were separated, and everyone was panting slightly. This kind of consumption is huge. David relies on the spiritual power in his Danshan and the power of the dragon to support it to the present, while Ningxi relies on magic to support it. Is this your last trump card? David looked at Ningxi with a gloomy expression. If so, then I won't play with you. Ningxi's expression was calm, and an ugly expression flashed on his face. He kept showing his cards, but David seemed to be able to deal with it easily. Hey, you don't have to pretend to be easy, now you are only the end of the shot, and then I will show you my real trump card. Ningxi said. Suddenly the black light on his body skyrocketed, and then the black light slowly escaped from Ningxi's body, and Ningxi's skin returned to its original appearance. Chapter 1139. The black light slowly converged and formed on the top of Ningxi's head, and soon a pitch-black aperture appeared. The aperture was pitch black, and nothing could be seen. And the space within the aperture seems to have ripples, like a calm lake being blown by a mighty wind. Seeing this scene, David frowned slightly. Could this guy be summoning some other beast? On Suolong Island, Ningxi and Gu Kaiwan had summoned alien beasts before, and David thought that Ningxi was repeating his old tricks this time. But after waiting for a while, nothing appeared from the dark circle of light. Instead, humming sounds sounded, and then a series of coercive pressures spread out from the aperture. These coercive pressures were like sound waves, rushing towards David's body one after another. David, let me tell you, this is the immortal execution formation. This technique is learned from an ancient book that is hundreds of years old. Let alone a mere mortal, even if you are an immortal, you can never escape. Ningxi glared at David, but at this time Ningxi's whole face began to distort. Performing such a technique is also a great challenge and loss for Ningxi. But in order to kill David, Ningxi could only fight. The black rays of light condensed, and the coercion continued to emit, and all the objects touched by the coercion turned into powder. One after another, the pressure spread, and even the ruins in the entire manor turned into powder at this moment, and there was nothing in the radius of hundreds of meters. Those ordinary people who were shocked to death by Ningxi's energy were not even able to leave their bodies. Directly into a mash. The demon suppression tower not far away was roaring at this moment, as if resisting the pressure. In a place of thousands of square meters, apart from David and Ningxi, only the Zhenmo Tower can stand here. David felt this extremely strong pressure, and the bones in his body were constantly rattling. This kind of pressure, wave after wave, did not give David a chance to breathe. Just when David was controlled by this coercion and the scales on his body kept collapsing, the earth suddenly trembled. A chain of black ink-like chains grew out like tentacles. 1, 2. A total of 18 black lacquered iron chains exuded bursts of cold light, forming a cage, trapping David in it. These chains seemed to come from the 18th H3LL, and even above the chains, the cries of ghosts from H3LL could be heard. A soul-stirring cry made people's scalp numb and tremble all over. It's a good immortal execution formation, but I don't know if it can trap me as a true immortal. After David finished speaking, the dragon crystal in his chest began to flicker, and the power of dragons erupted, forming giant dragons wrapped around David's body. Just when the power of David's dragon broke out, the Zhenmo Tower suddenly trembled, and then many dense light spots flew out from the Zhenmo Tower. These light spots can be clearly seen even for a long time. The billions of light spots are constantly approaching, and finally they converge into David's body. Ningxi's pupils shrank, and his eyes were full of incredible. He didn't know what these light spots that suddenly flew out of the Demon Town Tower were. The power in David's body was constantly growing, and the dragons roared, rising into the sky from David's body. 18 giant dragons were directly wrapped around the 18 black iron chains. The giant dragon radiated golden light, which formed a sharp contrast with the icy iron chains. Ningxi stared at the scene in front of him, his mouth opened involuntarily. Dragon crystal? The power of the dragon. Ningxi's eyes are full of greed and anger. If it weren't for David, this dragon crystal would be his own, and the terrifying dragon power would also be his own. Now these have become David's capital. David's body continued to emit light, and a bead with 5-color brilliance flew directly out of David's body. Chapter 1140. When this bead appeared, it was instantly radiant, and a peaceful force instantly shrouded it. Is this your own golden core? David looked at the beads in front of him, and it was a little incredible, especially the peaceful power emanating from the beads made David very comfortable. Originally, the iron chains that were so cold and the ghosts howled, now under the irradiation of this peaceful force, all have no sound, and slowly those iron chains have retracted back to the ground. The chains returned to the ground, and the dragons roared and disappeared in David's body instantly. Ningxi frowned, looking at the radiant beads in front of him, his eyes were full of surprise. He doesn't know what Jindan is. In his eyes, this should be another treasure of David, because there are too many treasures on David's body. Whether it is the dragon-slaying sword or the storage ring, whether it is the dragon crystal or the bead in front of him, each one is a priceless treasure. Seeing Ningxi's eyes turning red, he was so envious. David, if you die, these treasures will all be mine, all mine. After Ningxi finished speaking, the black aperture above his head exuded a brilliance, and there was a strong killing intent on this brilliance. The black light emitted is like a laser, destroying everything it penetrates. Seeing this, David slowly stepped forward with both hands, and the golden pill slowly fell into David's palm. A gentle force swept through David's body. Condensing into a golden pill, it also means that he has entered the path of immortality. This gentle force should be the power of immortality. This power was gently waved by David, and instantly moved towards the black brilliance. Two forces that can destroy the sky and destroy the earth, and the energy that erupts when they touch together is terrifying. But when the two forces really touched each other, there was no landslide as imagined, not even a single sound. I saw that black brilliance disappeared at the moment of touching it, and the black aperture above Ningxi's head also became fragmented and disappeared in a trembling. This. Ningxi's eyes were wide open, unable to believe his own eyes. He didn't understand what kind of treasure the bead in David's hand was. How could it be so powerful? What treasure do you have in your hand? Ningxi couldn't help but asked David curiously. David looked at his golden core and smiled lightly. When you die, I will tell you. David opened his mouth and swallowed the golden pill, and then the peaceful power disappeared. Ningxi looked at David in disbelief, and for a moment, Ningxi thought he was standing in front of a real immortal. Your immortal execution formation is not very good, even a mortal like me can't be trapped. After David finished speaking, his right hand flashed golden light, and then he slapped Ningxi with his palm. He just let Ningxi live, but unfortunately Ningxi is not rare, so now he can only kill. Feeling the terrifying aura coming from the attack, Ningxi was extremely horrified, and he did not dare to follow David to fight. He has no trump cards, he stays, and what awaits him is death. Ningxi put his hand into his arms, and then took out the Qunkan circle. As soon as David saw Ningxi take out the Qunkan circle, he immediately knew that this guy was going to use the Qunkan circle to escape. Then the figure flashed, and a palm slapped it fiercely. Bang! David slapped Ningxi's chest, and Ningxi's body flew out instantly. At the moment when his body flew out, Ningxi endured the severe pain and threw the Qunkan circle in his hand. Immediately in mid-air, a pitch-black hole appeared, and Ningxi's body directly entered the hole, and then disappeared. Damn, let him escape! David cursed, and he was envious of the Qunkan circle in Ningxi's hands. If he had such a space magic weapon, he could escape quickly when he was in danger.